The Mongol Empire conquered more territory in 25 years than Rome did in 400. They defeated armies 10 times their size, conquered civilizations that had stood for millennia, and struck terror into the hearts of enemies from Korea to Poland. How? The answer lies in a training system so brutal, so comprehensive, and so effective that it turned ordinary nomads into superhuman warriors. Today, we're going deep into the world of Mongol archer training, from childhood to the battlefield. You'll discover training methods so intense they make modern military boot camps look like summer vacation. Stick around because what you're about to learn will completely change how you think about medieval warfare. The Mongol saying goes, "A Mongol without a horse is like a bird without wings." But here's what most people don't realize. Mongol children weren't just taught to ride horses, they were literally raised on them. At age 3, before they could properly walk, Mongol children were tied to horses and taken on daily rides. Not gentle pony rides. We're talking about real journeys across the steppes that could last hours. The child's legs would be bound to prevent falling, and older family members would lead the horse while the toddler learned to balance and move with the animal's rhythm. By age 4, they were riding independently, not just sitting on a horse, actually controlling it. They learned to guide their mounts using only their legs and shifting their weight because their hands would soon be occupied with something far more deadly. The Mongols didn't see horses as vehicles or pets. Horses were partners, extensions of their own bodies. A skilled Mongol warrior could sleep in the saddle, eat while riding at full gallop, and perform complex maneuvers that seemed to defy physics. This bond was forged in early childhood through a training process that would be considered impossible by today's standards. Children learned to mount and dismount from both sides of the horse while it was moving. They practiced hanging from the side of their mount, using the horse's body as a shield while maintaining their ability to shoot. They could slide under their horse's belly and pop up on the other side without the animal breaking stride. The psychological aspect was just as important as the physical. Mongol children grew up understanding that their survival depended entirely on their relationship with their horse. They learned to read their mount's moods, to anticipate its reactions, and to communicate through subtle body language that outsiders couldn't even perceive. This wasn't just about transportation. The horse-rider bond was the foundation upon which all Mongol military tactics were built. Their famous hit-and-run attacks, their ability to cover impossible distances, their capacity to fight effectively while moving at high speed, all of this stemmed from this early childhood training that turned boy and horse into a single fighting unit. While other cultures saw the bow as a tool, Mongols viewed it as an extension of their soul. A Mongol's bow wasn't just a weapon, it was their identity, their livelihood, and often their path to glory or death. Mongol composite bows were technological marvels that wouldn't be matched in effectiveness until the invention of firearms. These weren't simple wooden bows. They were complex constructions made from horn, wood, sinew, and bone, layered and glued together in a process that took months to complete. The construction process itself was part of the training. Young Mongols learned to make their own bows from scratch, understanding every component and how it contributed to the weapon's power. They started with simple wooden bows at age 5, gradually progressing to more complex designs as their strength and skill developed. A fully grown Mongol warrior's bow had a draw weight of 120 to 160 pounds. To put that in perspective, modern Olympic archers use bows with draw weights of around 40 to 50 pounds. English longbows, famous for their power, typically maxed out at 150 pounds. Mongol bows packed this incredible power into a weapon small enough to be used effectively from horseback, but raw power meant nothing without the strength and technique to use it. Mongol archer training began with exercises designed to build the specific muscles needed for archery. Young warriors would practice drawing empty bowstrings hundreds of times per day, building the back, shoulder, and arm strength necessary to handle their weapons. They used a unique drawing technique called the thumb draw, or Mongolian draw. Instead of using multiple fingers like European archers, they drew the string with their thumb, protected by a specialized thumb ring made from horn, bone, or metal. This technique allowed for faster shooting and was more suited to mounted archery. The thumb rings themselves were works of art and engineering. They were precisely crafted to fit each archer's thumb perfectly, allowing for smooth release and protecting the thumb from the incredible force of the bowstring. A warrior's thumb ring was often his most prized possession, more valuable than gold or jewels. Accuracy training started with stationary targets at close range, but quickly progressed to moving targets at various distances, and eventually to shooting while mounted on a moving horse. By adulthood, a skilled Mongol archer could hit a man-sized target at 300 yards while riding at full gallop. Mongol physical training would make modern fitness enthusiasts weep. These weren't gym workouts, they were survival preparation for one of the harshest environments on Earth. The Mongol steppes are a place of extremes. Summer temperatures can reach 100 degrees Fahrenheit, while winter temperatures plummet to -40 degrees Fahrenheit. Altitude sickness is common, water is scarce, and the landscape offers little shelter from howling winds that can knock a grown man off his feet. Mongol children were deliberately exposed to these conditions from birth. They weren't coddled or protected from the elements. Instead, they were gradually conditioned to thrive in conditions that would kill unprepared individuals. Cold conditioning began in infancy. Babies were regularly bathed in ice-cold streams. Even in winter, children slept outdoors in minimal clothing, learning to generate body heat through muscle control and mental discipline. By adulthood, Mongol warriors could fight effectively in weather conditions that would incapacitate enemy armies. Endurance training was built into daily life. Mongol children were expected to keep up with adult activities regardless of their age or size. If the family was moving camp, a 6-year-old walked or rode just as far as the adults. If there was work to be done, children participated fully. Wrestling was a cornerstone of Mongol physical training. Not sport wrestling, combat wrestling designed to prepare warriors for hand-to-hand combat. Mongol wrestling, called buk, taught grappling techniques, balance, strength, and the mental toughness needed to continue fighting even when exhausted or injured. Wrestling matches could last for hours. Participants fought until one was thrown to the ground or gave up from exhaustion. There were no weight classes, no time limits, and no rules beyond basic safety. Young warriors learned to fight opponents who were bigger, stronger, and more experienced, developing the resourcefulness and determination that would serve them in actual combat. Flexibility and agility training was integrated with archery practice. Mongol archers needed to be able to shoot accurately while twisted into seemingly impossible positions on horseback. They practiced archery while hanging upside down, while bent backward over their horse's rump, and while twisted to shoot behind them while riding forward. The famous Parthian shot, shooting backward while retreating, was a standard Mongol tactic. This required incredible core strength, balance, and coordination. Warriors spent years perfecting their ability to maintain accuracy, while their bodies were contorted into positions that would challenge modern gymnasts. Physical prowess meant nothing without the proper mental conditioning. Mongol training focused heavily on developing the psychological attributes that separated elite warriors from mere soldiers. Fear management was perhaps the most crucial mental skill. Battles were chaotic, terrifying experiences where split-second decisions meant the difference between life and death. Mongol training deliberately exposed young warriors to controlled fear-inducing situations to build psychological resilience. Children were sent alone into the wilderness for days at a time with minimal supplies. They had to find food, water, and shelter while avoiding predators and surviving weather conditions. These solo expeditions weren't punishments, they were carefully designed training exercises that taught self-reliance and decision-making under pressure. Night training was particularly emphasized. Most armies avoided fighting in darkness because coordination and communication became nearly impossible. Mongols turned this limitation into an advantage by training extensively in nighttime conditions. They learned to navigate by stars, to move silently in complete darkness, and to coordinate attacks without verbal communication. Pain tolerance training bordered on the extreme. Young warriors were taught to function normally while experiencing significant discomfort. They practiced archery with injured fingers, rode horses with saddle sores, and continued training even when sick or exhausted. This wasn't sadism, it was practical preparation. Battles were brutal affairs where warriors fought with broken bones, deep cuts, and various injuries. A warrior who stopped fighting because of pain was a dead warrior. Mongol training ensured that physical discomfort never interfered with combat effectiveness. Concentration training involved meditation-like practices that developed focus and mental clarity. Warriors learned to enter a state of flow where external distractions disappeared and their entire being was focused on the task at hand. This mental state was crucial for archery, where the slightest distraction could mean missing a target and potentially losing a battle. Tactical thinking was developed through constant strategy games and discussions. Young warriors didn't just learn to follow orders, They learned to think like commanders. They studied successful battles, analyzed failed strategies, and developed their own tactical innovations. Hunting wasn't recreation for Mongols. It was advanced military training disguised as survival necessity. The Great Mongol Hunts were massive operations that served multiple purposes, providing food, training warriors, and practicing military maneuvers. The Mongols organized hunts on an incredible scale. Entire armies would participate in hunts that covered thousands of square miles and lasted for months. These weren't casual hunting trips. They were military exercises that mimicked actual warfare in every detail except the enemy. The famous Batu hunt involved surrounding enormous areas of land with thousands of warriors, then gradually contracting the circle over days or weeks. Animals trapped inside were driven toward the center, where they would be systematically killed by archers. This exercise perfectly replicated the encirclement tactics that Mongols used so effectively in warfare. During these hunts, young warriors learned to coordinate with hundreds or thousands of other fighters. They practiced maintaining formation while moving across difficult terrain, communicating through signals rather than voice commands, and adapting their tactics based on changing conditions. The psychological aspects of hunting training were just as important as the tactical ones. Killing animals prepared young warriors for the reality of taking human lives. Many modern soldiers struggle with the psychological trauma of their first kill in combat. Mongol warriors had already overcome this barrier through years of hunting training. Different types of hunts taught different skills. Wolf hunts taught tracking and persistence. Wolves were intelligent, dangerous prey that required patience and cunning to defeat. Bear hunts taught courage and close combat skills, as wounded bears often had to be finished with spears or knives. Bird hunting with trained falcons taught patience, observation skills, and the importance of partnership between warrior and animal. The relationship between a Mongol and his hunting falcon mirrored the relationship between warrior and horse, one of mutual respect and seamless cooperation. Solo hunting expeditions were the ultimate test of a young warrior's skills. Armed only with a bow and a few arrows, young Mongols were sent into the wilderness for weeks at a time. They had to provide their own food through hunting while avoiding becoming prey themselves. These solo hunts taught resourcefulness, self-reliance, and decision-making under pressure. A young warrior who returned successfully had proven his ability to survive and thrive in conditions similar to those he might face during military campaigns in enemy territory. Mongol war games were far more sophisticated and realistic than anything practiced by their enemies. These weren't friendly competitions, they were brutal simulations that replicated the chaos and danger of actual warfare. Mock battles involved thousands of participants and could last for days. Warriors were divided into opposing armies and fought using blunted weapons and special arrows designed to mark hits without causing serious injury. However, injuries were still common, and death was not unheard of during these exercises. The realism of these war games was extraordinary. Participants fought with the same intensity as in actual battles. There were no timeouts, no breaks for meals, and no mercy for exhaustion. Warriors who couldn't keep up were eliminated, just as they would be in real warfare. Strategic exercises taught young warriors to think beyond individual combat. They learned to read battlefields, understand terrain advantages, and coordinate with other units. These games developed the tactical intelligence that made Mongol armies so adaptable and effective. Communication training was integrated into war games. Mongol armies used complex systems of signals involving flags, horns, and messenger riders. During mock battles, warriors had to maintain communication across vast distances while under pressure, learning to convey and interpret orders even in chaotic conditions. Supply management was another crucial aspect of wargame training. Mongol armies were famous for their ability to operate independently for months at a time. Wargames taught young warriors how to manage food, water, arrows, and equipment during extended campaigns. Psychological warfare training involved learning to use fear as a weapon. Mongols were masters of intimidation, often winning battles before they began through clever use of propaganda and terror tactics. Wargames taught warriors how to project strength and confidence while identifying and exploiting enemy weaknesses. Adaptation exercises forced warriors to fight under constantly changing conditions. Mock battles would begin as cavalry engagements, then shift to siege warfare, then to infantry combat. Warriors learned to adapt their tactics and weapons based on evolving situations. The most elite war games involved fighting multiple consecutive battles without rest. Warriors who had just finished one engagement would immediately be thrown into another, teaching them to function effectively even when exhausted, injured, and low on supplies. Not all Mongol warriors were created equal. The most promising individuals received advanced training that elevated them from skilled fighters to legendary warriors capable of changing the course of history. The selection process for advanced training was brutal and unforgiving. Only warriors who had demonstrated exceptional skill, intelligence, and leadership potential were chosen. Many candidates didn't survive the training, which was designed to push human capabilities to their absolute limits. Advanced archery training involved shooting at targets while performing acrobatic maneuvers on horseback. Elite archers learned to shoot accurately while hanging from their horse's side, while standing on their saddle, and while performing controlled falls that made them appear wounded or dead to enemies. The legendary accuracy of elite Mongol archers wasn't exaggerated by medieval chroniclers. These warriors could consistently hit targets the size of a coin at distances of over 100 yards while riding at full gallop. They could shoot multiple arrows in rapid succession, with each one finding its mark. Command training prepared elite warriors for leadership roles. They learned logistics, strategy, diplomacy, and the psychological aspects of leadership. Mongol commanders weren't just skilled fighters, they were sophisticated military minds capable of managing complex campaigns across vast distances. Intelligence and reconnaissance training taught elite warriors to gather information behind enemy lines. They learned foreign languages, customs, and disguise techniques. Some Mongol warriors spent years living among enemy populations, gathering intelligence and preparing for future invasions. Siege warfare training prepared warriors for urban combat. While Mongols were primarily known as mounted warriors, their most successful campaigns involved capturing heavily fortified cities. Elite warriors learned engineering, artillery management, and the complex logistics of siege operations. Counterintelligence training taught warriors to spread disinformation and confusion among enemies. Mongols were masters of psychological warfare, often winning battles through clever misinformation campaigns that caused enemy armies to make fatal strategic errors. Survival training for elite warriors went far beyond basic wilderness skills. These individuals learned to survive and operate effectively in any environment on Earth, from Arctic tundra to tropical jungles to desert wastelands. They were prepared to conduct operations anywhere their campaigns might take them. The final stage of training involved integrating all learned skills into a seamless whole. This wasn't about mastering individual techniques, it was about becoming a living weapon capable of adapting to any combat situation. Integration training began with complex scenarios that required simultaneous use of multiple skills. Warriors might have to shoot accurately while controlling their horse with their legs, communicating with allies through hand signals, and navigating difficult terrain, all while under simulated enemy fire. The famous Mongol feigned retreat was one of the most complex maneuvers in medieval warfare. It required perfect coordination between hundreds of warriors, precise timing, and the ability to maintain formation while appearing to flee in panic. This tactic won countless battles, but required years of practice to execute effectively. Mental integration was just as important as physical coordination. Warriors learned to process multiple streams of information simultaneously, tracking enemy movements, monitoring their own supplies, coordinating with allies, and planning several moves ahead, like master chess players. The development of combat instincts was perhaps the most crucial aspect of integration training. Experienced warriors didn't consciously think about their actions in battle. They reacted instantly and appropriately to threats and opportunities. This level of unconscious competence could only be developed through years of intensive training. Leadership integration prepared warriors to command others while fighting personally. Mongol officers didn't lead from the rear. They fought alongside their men while simultaneously managing tactics and strategy. This required an extraordinary level of mental and physical capability. Cultural integration ensured that warriors understood their role within the larger Mongol war machine. Individual heroics were less important than unit effectiveness. Warriors learned to subordinate personal glory to tactical necessity, making Mongol armies far more effective than collections of individual fighters. The final test of integration was actual combat. Young warriors weren't considered fully trained until they had proven themselves in real battles. Those who survived and performed well were fully accepted as Mongol warriors. Those who didn't, well, the steppes didn't offer second chances. The Mongol training system didn't just create skilled warriors, it forged the most effective military force in human history. Understanding this training helps explain how a relatively small population of nomads conquered the largest contiguous empire the world has ever seen. Modern military training owes much to Mongol innovations. The emphasis on physical conditioning, mental toughness, realistic simulation, and adaptive thinking became standard practices in elite military units worldwide. The integration of mounted combat, archery, and tactical thinking created a template that influenced military development for centuries. The psychological impact of Mongol training extended far beyond individual warriors. Enemies who faced Mongol armies weren't just fighting skilled soldiers, they were confronting individuals who had been systematically conditioned for warfare since childhood. The terror that Mongol armies inspired wasn't based on reputation alone, it was the natural human response to encountering beings who seemed purpose-built for destruction. But perhaps most importantly, Mongol training demonstrates the incredible potential of human development when systematic methods are applied consistently over time. These weren't superhuman beings, they were ordinary people subjected to extraordinary training that unlocked capabilities that most of us never realize we possess. The next time you think something is impossible, remember the 5-year-old Mongol child learning to shoot a bow while riding a horse at full gallop. Remember that human potential is far greater than we typically imagine, and that with proper training and dedication, ordinary people can achieve extraordinary things. The Mongol Empire eventually fell, but the training methods that created it offer timeless lessons about discipline, dedication, and the power of systematic human development. In our modern world of comfort and convenience, perhaps we could learn something from these ancient warriors who turned the impossible into the inevitable through nothing more than relentless training and unshakable determination. Thanks for watching, and if this deep dive into Mongol training fascinated you, hit that subscribe button.